On the evening of January 13, 2012, a cruise ship carrying 4,229 people struck a rock off the island of Giglio on the coast of Italy. The rock was marked on every nautical chart. The captain knew it was there. He had sailed past it before. In fact, he had deliberately steered his ship toward it to perform an unauthorized maneuver that his company had not approved, that maritime regulations did not permit, and that his own officers had warned him against. 32 people died. The ship, the Costa Concordia, became the largest passenger vessel ever to sink in peacetime. And the story of how it happened is not just a story of one reckless captain. It is a story of institutional failure, regulatory gaps, human psychology under pressure, and a maritime industry that had convinced itself that modern technology had made disaster impossible. It had not. The Costa Concordia was not a small ship. Launched in 2006, it was 290 meters long, nearly 3 football fields. It weighed 114,500 gross tons. It carried up to 3,780 passengers and a crew of 1,100. It had 13 decks, 1,500 cabins, 5 restaurants, 13 bars, a casino, a theater, and a shopping mall. It was, in every sense, a floating city, and like a city, it was designed with the assumption that its fundamental infrastructure, its hull, its watertight compartments, its stability systems, would never be catastrophically compromised. That assumption was about to be tested. The captain of the Costa Concordia on the night of January 13th was Francesco Schettino. He had been with Costa Cruises for years and had commanded the Concordia since 2006. He was considered an experienced officer. But on this particular voyage, Schettino had decided to perform what the cruise industry calls a salute, an unauthorized close pass of a small island to impress the people on shore and the passengers on board. The island was Giglio. The planned pass would bring the ship to within a few hundred meters of the rocky coastline, far closer than any vessel of this size should ever approach. The maneuver was not in the approved voyage plan. It had not been sanctioned by Costa Cruises, and it required Schettino to manually override the ship's automated navigation systems and steer the vessel by hand in waters that demanded extreme precision. At 21:44 local time, the Costa Concordia struck the Lascaux Reef, a submerged rock formation off the eastern coast of Giglio that was clearly marked on the ship's nautical charts. The collision tore a gash approximately 70 meters long and 7 meters wide in the port side of the hull, below the waterline. In the space of a few seconds, the ship had suffered catastrophic flooding in multiple watertight compartments simultaneously. The damage was so extensive and so rapid that the ship's designers had never anticipated it. The Concordia was designed to stay afloat with 2 adjacent watertight compartments flooded. The reef had flooded 5. What happened in the minutes and hours after the collision is one of the most disturbing studies in crisis management failure ever recorded. The immediate problem was not the flooding, it was the response. Captain Schettino, faced with the most serious emergency of his career, made a series of decisions that would later be described by the Italian court that convicted him as a cascade of errors driven by panic, vanity, and an unwillingness to admit the severity of what had happened. The ship's initial distress call to the Italian Coast Guard was vague and evasive, describing a generic electrical problem rather than a catastrophic hull breach. Passengers were told there was a technical problem and were instructed to return to their cabins. The order to abandon ship, which maritime law requires to be given immediately when a vessel is in danger of sinking, was not given for over an hour after the collision. In that hour, the ship continued to list, to lean to one side, as water flooded the hull, making the eventual evacuation dramatically more dangerous than it would have been if the order had been given immediately. The evacuation of the Costa Concordia was chaotic in ways that exposed fundamental failures in the cruise industry's safety culture. The ship carried enough lifeboats for everyone on board, as required by international maritime law. But as the ship listed to port, the lifeboats on the port side became impossible to launch. They were pressed against the hull by the angle of the ship. The lifeboats on the starboard side swung outward, away from the ship, making them difficult and dangerous to board. Crew members who had never conducted a real emergency evacuation and had received minimal practical training found themselves trying to manage thousands of panicking passengers in the dark, on a steeply listing ship in cold January waters. The muster drill, the mandatory safety briefing that international maritime law requires to be conducted within 24 hours of a cruise ship departing port, had not yet been conducted for the passengers who had boarded that day. They did not know where their muster stations were. They did not know how to put on a life jacket correctly, and they did not know who to follow. Among the survivors were people whose accounts of that night reveal the full human cost of the failures that occurred. Benji Smith, an American passenger, described climbing through corridors that had become vertical shafts as the ship rolled, pulling himself along handrails that were now above his head in complete darkness, with water rising around him. An elderly Italian couple were found clinging to the hull of the ship hours after the capsize, too weak to swim, too frightened to let go, waiting in the cold January water for rescuers who almost did not find them in time. A family of 4 from Germany were separated during the evacuation, the parents reaching a lifeboat, while their 2 children were carried to a different part of the ship by the crowd. They were reunited on the island of Giglio 6 hours later, but for those 6 hours, each believed the other might be dead. A crew member from the Philippines described trying to calm passengers who did not speak Italian or English, the 2 languages in which all emergency announcements were made, while the floor beneath them tilted at an angle that made standing impossible. These were not statistics. These were human beings placed in mortal danger by decisions made on the bridge of the ship they had trusted with their lives. The physical process by which the Costa Concordia sank is a masterclass in the engineering of stability and its limits. A ship's stability depends on the relationship between 2 points, the center of gravity and the metacenter. The center of gravity is the point through which the entire weight of the ship acts downward. The metacenter is a geometric point that depends on the shape of the hull, specifically on how the buoyancy force shifts as the ship heels to one side. As long as the metacenter is above the center of gravity, the ship is stable. Any list creates a restoring force that pushes the ship back upright. But as water floods into the hull, 2 things happen simultaneously. The center of gravity rises because the added weight of the water is high in the ship, and the effective buoyancy of the hull decreases because the flooded compartments can no longer contribute to keeping the ship afloat. At a critical point, called the angle of vanishing stability, the restoring force disappears entirely. Beyond this angle, the ship cannot recover. It will capsize. The Costa Concordia reached this point at approximately 01 ECOSAR on January 14th, roughly 3 hours after the collision, and rolled onto its side, coming to rest on the shallow seabed with its starboard side above the waterline. Subscribe now, because what we are about to show you is how this disaster could have been prevented at every single stage. The behavior of Captain Schettino after the ship began to capsize became one of the most infamous episodes in modern maritime history. As the Costa Concordia rolled onto its side and passengers were still trapped on board, Schettino left the ship. He did not lead the evacuation. He did not coordinate rescue efforts from the bridge. He boarded a lifeboat and was taken to shore, while hundreds of his passengers and crew were still fighting for their lives in the cold water around the stricken vessel. When the Italian Coast Guard captain Gregorio De Falco reached him by radio and ordered him to return to the ship, the exchange was recorded and broadcast around the world. De Falco's repeated command, "Get back on board," became a symbol of the catastrophic failure of leadership that night. Schettino refused. He claimed he had fallen into a lifeboat accidentally. The Italian courts did not accept this explanation. He was eventually convicted of multiple manslaughter, causing a shipwreck and abandoning ship, and sentenced to 16 years in prison. The rescue operation that followed was one of the most complex maritime salvage operations in history. In the immediate aftermath, the Italian Coast Guard and civilian rescuers worked through the night to evacuate survivors from the stricken vessel, pulling people from the water, from lifeboats, and from the hull of the ship itself, which was now lying on its side in shallow water. 32 people died. some in the initial chaos of the evacuation, some trapped inside the hull as it rolled. 2 bodies were never recovered. In the days that followed, the ship became a massive environmental hazard. It was carrying 2,280 tons of heavy fuel oil that threatened to spill into the ecologically sensitive waters around Giglio. An emergency operation was launched to pump the fuel from the ship, a process that took months and cost tens of millions of euros. The salvage of the Costa Concordia itself became an engineering project of extraordinary complexity, the largest maritime salvage operation ever attempted. The ship lay on its side in 20 meters of water, partially supported by the rocky seabed, in waters that were both ecologically sensitive and logistically challenging. The conventional salvage approach, refloating the ship and towing it, was impossible. The ship was too large, too damaged, and lying at too severe an angle. The solution developed by the Salvage Consortium was a technique called parbuckling, a method of rotating a capsized vessel upright using cables and hydraulic systems. Massive steel platforms called sponsons were welded to the exposed starboard side of the ship. Hydraulic pulling systems were attached to cables running under the hull. On September 16, 2013, 20 months after the sinking, the parbuckling operation began. Over the course of approximately 19 hours, the 114,500-ton wreck was slowly rotated from its side to an upright position, the largest parbuckling operation ever attempted anywhere in the world. The ship was then refloated, towed to the port of Genoa, and scrapped. The total cost of the salvage operation exceeded 1.5 billion euros, making it the most expensive maritime salvage in history. The Costa Concordia disaster triggered a fundamental re-examination of safety standards across the entire cruise industry. The International Maritime Organization, the United Nations body that regulates global shipping, introduced a series of new requirements in response to the disaster. Muster drills were required to be conducted before a ship departs port, not within 24 hours afterward. Bridge resource management training was strengthened. Requirements for the recording and monitoring of the positions of all persons on board were tightened, and the investigation produced detailed recommendations about the design of evacuation systems, particularly the vulnerability of conventional davit-launched lifeboats when a ship develops a severe list. But the Costa Concordia was not the first time the maritime world had been given these warnings. On March 6, 1987, the Herald of Free Enterprise, a roll-on roll-off ferry operated by Townsend Thorsen, capsized in the harbor of Zeebrugge in Belgium, less than 2 minutes after leaving port. The bow doors had been left open. Water flooded the car deck instantly. 193 people died. The subsequent investigation found that the company had received multiple warnings from its own officers about the risk of sailing with open bow doors, and had ignored every one of them. 7 years later, on September 28, 1994, the MS Estonia, a passenger ferry operating between Tallinn and Stockholm, sank in the Baltic Sea in severe storm conditions. 852 people died, making it the deadliest peacetime maritime disaster in European waters since World War II. The bow visor, the massive hinged door at the front of the ship, failed under the force of the waves, flooding the car deck and causing the ship to sink in less than 30 minutes. Both disasters produced detailed investigations. Both produced new international safety regulations. Both were supposed to make the next disaster impossible. And yet 15 years after the Estonia, the Costa Concordia sank. Not because of a mechanical failure, not because of a storm, but because a captain steered his ship into a rock to show off. Perhaps the most important lesson of the Costa Concordia disaster is one that applies far beyond maritime safety. It is the lesson of normalization of deviance, the process by which an organization gradually comes to accept practices that violate its own safety standards, because those practices have not yet produced a catastrophic outcome. The unauthorized salute maneuver that Schettino performed on the night of January 13th was not the first time it had been done. It had been done before by Schettino himself and by other captains. Costa Cruises had records of previous close passes of Giglio. Nobody had been seriously injured, no ship had been damaged, and so the practice had become normalized, not officially sanctioned, but tolerated. The safety violation had been repeated so many times without consequence that it no longer felt like a safety violation. It felt like a routine, until the night it killed 32 people. The Costa Concordia now exists only in photographs and in the memory of the survivors, the rescuers, and the families of those who did not come home. The island of Giglio returned to being a quiet Tuscan fishing community. The waters where the ship sank were cleaned and restored. But the questions raised by the disaster about the safety culture of the cruise industry, about the psychology of command authority, about the gap between regulatory requirements and actual practice have not been fully answered. Every year, cruise ships carry tens of millions of passengers across the world's oceans. The ships are bigger than ever. The largest today are over 360 meters long and carry over 9,000 people. The technology is more sophisticated than ever, but technology did not save the 32 people who died off Giglio on January 13, 2012, and technology alone will never be enough, as long as the human decisions made on the bridge of a ship can override every safety system ever engineered.